just be you and me. Pretty shallow, guys. You're going to take off? No, I'll pray. Your son.
The Washington County Quorum Court has now called into order. We'll go ahead and ask Fred Roush, Justice Roush, if you lead us in prayer and pledge. All rise.
Father God, we thank you for the day that you have blessed us with. Lord, we thank you that you are present with us tonight. And Lord, we ask you to give us wisdom, give us clarity in our decisions and the workings that we have going on for the county and for the residents of Washington County. Lord, I pray especially for our meeting this evening, Lord, that you oversee it. And Lord, that you oversee our decisions. Lord, I pray for our leadership. I pray for Judge Woods. Lord, our committee chairs. Lord, I pray for our governor this evening. Lord, our president, and all of the other members of Congress, the administration. Lord, we need you right now. Lord, with all that we see happening around us, Lord, right now we need you more than ever. So God, I thank you for this opportunity to serve. Lord, we thank you again for blessing us. You said that you will never leave us nor forsake us. And God, we thank you for that assurance. Lord, we ask these things in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Roush. Good afternoon, good evening. Good to see everyone here. We will go ahead and look to adopt the agenda. It's been moved and properly second.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to ask that a report be done on the Rogers Group, the mining pit, sometime during the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's been a motion to adopt the agenda. With the addition added. Okay. Second. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. With that being said, we're going to open it up for citizens' comments. Oh, you guys look so excited to be with us this afternoon. Don't all jump at one time. Come on. Sheriff, you want to share anything? You just had a nice vacation. You want to come and join and say anything? No? Okay.
Hey, if I wanted everybody to know that.
Good to have you back, sir. Any citizen comments? All right.
I move approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes has been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I move that we suspend the rules and read the ordinances and resolutions by title only this evening.
Judge, I would support that with the exception of agenda item number 13, which is the employee handbook sick leave amendment.
Sure, I'm good with that.
If Justice Madison will accept that friendly amendment.
All right, so we're looking to suspend the rules, read by title only, with the exception of item number 13 as a friendly amendment. It's been moved.
Second.
Properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Are those opposed?
No.
And the ayes have it. Okay. All right, so the first one up was Justice Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. You know, I thought for sure we was going to have somebody here representing Mercy Hospital tonight, but there is none. And the best I understand from this proposal is they're asking us to approve the same thing we did for Washington Regional here recently, to issue a tax-free bond for the construction of a new facility on Elm Springs Road and 49. This is a great facility, about a mile from my house. I'm thrilled to death to have them. The county has no liability in this situation, but it gives them an opportunity to finance that part of that construction cost with tax-free bonds. So I'd move that we accept this and pass it on.
Second.
Justice, Counselor, will you go ahead and read the title of the resolution?
A resolution approving the issuance of the Health and Educational Facilities Authority of the State of Missouri Health Facilities Revenue Bonds.
It's been moved to accept.
Yes.
We're going to do a second reading. No, we're moving properly second. Do I have to do it on the resolution? Okay, then it's been moved to properly second. Let's go and do a roll call, Ms. Patty.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Boss.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Ozark Transit, Ozark Regional Transit. Mr. Hadley, come and join us.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, my name is Jeff Hatley. I'm the Public Information Officer for Ozark Regional Transit, here to give a quarterly report on public transportation in Washington County. Sent out the report, and it's got a couple things on here. I think I brought it to your attention before, but this is a graphic of our ridership before and after our fires. You can tell it dipped quite a bit on the days following January 10th, 2017, but those numbers are starting to bounce back a little bit. We're going to be down about 15% ridership at the end of the year, and we're slowly recovering from that. Also, this graphic of pickups with our demand response in Washington County is included with your report. In Washington County, ridership has kind of ebbed and flowed, but steadily increased. In May of this year, we had 293 pickups. In June, 354. In July, back down to 310. In August, 377. And then in September, which is our latest statistics, 334. Our veterans program, where we're allowing veterans to ride our fixed route system, has been a winner for us. We've had as many as 418 veterans per week in a given week using our free fare on fixed routes, mostly on Route 4, which makes sense because that's the Veterans Administration. We had 381 veterans take advantage of that last week, and a total of 6,054 since we instituted that in June 5th. As I said, we're slowly returning to full speed on our transit system after the fire. What a lot of people don't take into account is that not only did we lose buses, we lost the bicycle racks, we lost the Wi-Fi, we lost the GPS tracking, we lost the radios being able to talk back and forth. So we lost a lot of efficiencies. I think I reported last time that we were testing a new radio system, and we do have that installed now. So now, as we're pulling up to a transfer point and somebody needs to hold that bus for a little bit longer, we can call ahead to have them hold up just a little bit, which is obviously going to increase ridership. And got a report today that our GPS tracking is currently being reinstalled, and so that should be up and running by the end of the month. That will allow our phone app to begin working again so that people can actually find the bus stops and when the bus will schedule to be there and that type of. There's a lot of things that hinge on GPS tracking, and it'll also help us be able to keep up with exactly where our buses are as well. It's a very short report tonight. That's really all I've got to report. I'm happy to answer any questions or entertain any comments or concerns.
Any comments? Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Hatley, it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
I do have a question about your employees. I know that some of the senior ranking employees that you had went ahead and took vacation, or if those that didn't need the income deferred their time or their place on the transit for the buses to the younger ones that really need it. Mm-hmm. How are you able to staff? Has everybody been able to come back full time?
Oh, yes. We were actually able to field every route that we ran before within 9 days, and thankfully that was during the Christmas break, so especially NWAC students. We have a lot of NWAC students ride our bus service, and so they weren't really affected. But there were some that were concerned that maybe they needed to drop out if they weren't going to be able to make it to their NWAC classes. It affected U of A students as well, but they don't ride as near as much as NWAC does for obvious reasons. But yeah, we were able, within 9 days, we were able to get all of our bus routes going again, and so yeah, that was not a problem. But during that 9 days, yes, some senior people that they just took some vacation time and allowed the routes to be run by some of the younger people that hadn't accrued vacation time yet. And then we also worked with Dynasty Transportation and Razorback for some extra work if some of our drivers needed to get some extra work. So a lot of people came out and helped us with that.
Well, that's good to know that the employees weren't just out of a job because of this disaster that happened. And
Yep.
it's good to know, especially during that time of year.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Hadley, I think we have you coming in doing quarterly, so this would be your last meeting. I think we would take the JP's request if we want to have a December report just to close out the year that you can just submit.
Mm-hmm. I'm certainly happy to if you'd like.
Oh, okay, beginning in January.
I would think to have a year-end report at the beginning of next year sometime.
Well, happy to join us for the rest of the year, but again, we won't see you again until New Year.
Okay. I believe Joel is going to be here Tuesday night for your budget.
The budget meeting is on Tuesday. Justice Maxwell, you plan on being there?
No, Joel.
Oh, you're Joel.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. All right. Okay. I got you. All right. I just had some surgery, so I'm still kind of catching up here. All right. Good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, so then we'll move on to, I guess, the judge's report. So, Joe Maxwell, Justice Maxwell, the reason I was thinking of you is because I want to thank you for leading the meeting last month, and thank you, appreciate that. I think we also had Justice Madison do it sometime before, early in the year. So I want to appreciate you. I was in D.C., as you know, receiving a award from Congress, Angels in Adoption, working with foster care and adoption, and so it was a good, really powerful event, and so I appreciate you guys and the citizens' support and for that whole endeavor. Really moving. Highlights, clearly the elected officials and JPs will continue to work through budgets and working with Chairman Madison, Eva Madison, as well as Director Farber and Treasurer Hill, Bobby Hill. It's been full throttle and moving like gangbusters, so I want to again thank you guys for working through that and pushing through the budget pieces. In our archives, we have just completed our moving of records and files from our first floor to the second floor to evenly distribute the weight. We have some weight issues in the building. So much the old files and all were sitting there on the first floor, and so we moved a lot of that to the second floor, got a lot of that scanned, and so we're really pleased with him getting that taken care of. Animal Shelter, Director Ledgerwood, and I don't know if I saw any of you guys out there, but she had a team out there at the Razor Run, which used to be the Hog Eye Marathon. They did a big fundraiser for the animal shelter, and so she had a team to help raise some money for the animal shelter, and it was great success in that. Right now we're subcontracting with 2 veterinarian services. We got the resignation from our current veterinarian who left, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and so now we have 2 professional veterinarians that are taking care of our animals that need some of that health and well-being and taking care of them. Building and Grounds, Director Gonzalez leading the team. They just finished getting the new HVAC system, the heating and ventilation system in the old courthouse completely done. A long time coming because it was in need of it. At the ceiling of the parking lot here at the courthouse will begin end of next week, and so we anticipate having that done before October 30th. So by the time you make it to your next Quorum Court meeting, you'll be driving on a newly sealed parking lot. The weather's just about right now, so this is going to be a good time to get that done. Department of Emergency Management and 9/11, again, it's just unbelievable. Give big thanks if you see Director Luther and his team. Again, their search and rescue team has continued to do outstanding work. The last being out there with the Devil Den, looking for the guys who were lost out there. And they also went and participated down in Hurricane Harvey. We got called in by the state to go and help and do some of that. So again, hats off to them for just continuing to set the stage and set the example on delivering that type of service. They're also in preparation to do some countywide terrorist training, and so we're going to be working with our employees just to kind of be prepared and work through that. Environmental Services held, and some of you guys may have participated in, but our Washington County fall cleanup, several tons of debris, trash, junk, treasure for some was deposited in our facilities as well as Boston Mountain. Again, hats off to them for that for 2 days, but a lot of collection in that process. And they're getting ready to work with a lot of law enforcement and all. On October 28th, they'll be working with a number to do what they call a papers and peels. So a lot of your confidential documents and all, you can bring them in, get it shredded. And then a lot of people who are holding on to some of those old prescriptions that you didn't finish using, you get a chance to take that in and deposit that, and so it'll be safely discarded and taken care of. So that'll be October 28th. Our grants department, Director Lloyd, again, is right now working to secure a grant. We just spent a lot of time working on the Armory building and kind of looked at the basement and thought that would be a great community shelter. And so she's working on securing some grants so we can make that a community shelter should they've been called for it. She is now knocking on 20 grants completed for $3.1 million for the county. So again, a lot of effort and work has been procured out of the grants department. Director Watson and HR team held their health and benefits fair both on the South Campus as well as the courthouse. And so again, kudos to them and their team. Well attended, a lot of traction there. Again, can't speak enough with the HR team, and they continue to work, obviously, as they do some updates, and we'll see in the meeting here to some of the things in the benefits book, the employee handbook. IT is updating countywide any of the systems, upgrading to the Windows 10, so that's underway, and they also are working on a mitigation security plan. Again, when we continue to talk meeting after meeting about cyber threats, et cetera, so they're working on a mitigation plan to kind of mitigate, obviously, some of the security threats. Director Mack and the JDC, she is now continuing to work with Judge Zimmerman. And if you don't know, there's an evening night reporting center in Springdale, right part of the Jones Center, the JTL building. Again, to kind of work with some of those teams who have been in the JDC and juvenile court to go there after school and have a program there. And so she's been working with them. IT has been working with them. And so Director Mack is really working hard with Judge Zimmerman and keeping that opening, that center. We'll have a grand opening, we think, in the 1st of November. So stay tuned. Director Mack also has procured a new warmer cooker for her kitchen facility, and the other one had pretty much went kaput. It's not a new one, it's a used one, but it's a used one that Benton County was no longer using, so we got it down there, retrofitted the outlets, and so it's going to be a great help having that in there to take care of those students over there. Library services in your packet, you will see their annual report. Again, she continues to do outstanding work, Director Aldrain. Over 1 million books have been checked out in our county library system. We also have the board members of that library as they just had their annual board meeting approving their budget, which again, for the most part, will be taking care of the millage that is dedicated for taking care of our library. We also have preschool story time occurring, and that'll go through December 21st. So you guys got some kiddos, get to one of our libraries and let them go through some story time. Planning Department Director Kimbrough, again, great discussion with our mayors. Again, I meet with the mayors once a month, and in fact, we met today, and the topic was on working with our Planning Department and how they can come in, maybe even visit with us during our tech reviews on some of the projects that's going to be entailing some their future planning district. So if there's some projects that's going on that's not actually in the city, but in their planning district, inviting them to come in those tech reviews interview so they can give some thoughts and insights so that individual who's working on the project will know, hey, if I go down there, I can spend some time working with that mayor and his team. There's some of the things I can do in case there's an annexation, et cetera. So appreciate Director Kimbrough on leading that. Roads and bridges, we have finished up our paperwork thanks to Director Charles Ward and Brad and Ms. Laney. They've been working feverishly with FEMA. FEMA has finally got the last bit of paperwork to submit for our April 2017 storm that we had here. So it's been a long time. FEMA had to go out and touch the roads, see the roads, assess the roads, and then go back in and start putting T's and I's on all the paperwork. And so that's just got completed. So we're glad of that. Campbell Loop is currently being asphalted. We should be completed with the asphalt by close of business tomorrow. Purchasing has an online auction going on right now. Should end tomorrow. I don't think that they're going to collect the $775,000 that we collected during our road inventory auction, but I do think we'll procure a few $1,000s from that online auction, and that'll close tomorrow. And then finally, our veteran services. Again, we continue to seek volunteers to assist our veterans office there. Officer Medina has just continued to do all he can to manage that. Right now, we've served over 1,050 veterans since we started here in January. So again, kudos to him and his team. Next month, Colonel Todd will be coming in from the Arkansas Department of Veterans Affairs office to again spend some time doing some tour and spend some time with Officer Medina. So we're looking forward to having them come in November. Last week, Arkansas was there. Great turnout on Saturday. I saw some of you guys out there. Super hot, but well-attended event. War Eagle is now underway, and while it's not in our county per se, we will have some arts and craft festivals going on in the Washington County Fairgrounds as well as at the Springdale Rodeo. So if you were thinking and looking for something to do, you can go to Springdale Rodeo or go hang out at the Washington County Fairgrounds. I thought I had one other. There's the True Literary Festival is happening here at the Fayetteville Public Library. October 22nd through the 29th. So again, if you're a bookworm, you want to get out there and visit, that's their 5th annual literary festival here at the Fayetteville Public Library. And then Elkins I'm a big car nut and love it, but Elkins is going to have their car and craft show as well as the chili cook-off. Well, they already had that one, but they got another event coming up, so you want to keep your eyes open for what Elkins has on there. Finally, I got a letter today from the Arkansas Department of Transportation. Their board met, the Board of Commissioners met, and they are going to go ahead and look at continuing the Highway 412 study, which is, again, looking at that whole corridor, which will tie in a few more counties and towns. And so that's pretty exciting. And again, if you spend a little time with some of those cities and other counties, the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development Commission has really been driving and pushing that. How do we get the commissioners to consider going back and looking at that Highway 412 and continue to work on that? That's a major thoroughfare, and we want to see that happen. So that was exciting news to see that. Counselor, if you have a legal update you want to share.
The only two things. One, as far as the lawsuit's concerned, I know there's been a lot of questions asked about where are we on the lawsuit that was filed by former county attorney George Butler. Basically, nothing's happened. We don't have a court date set. I think the attorneys have had some correspondence back and forth, but other than that, there is no update. The only other thing, there's some questions have arisen from an article that Ms. Scarlett wrote at the beginning of the week on the rock quarry out in Farmington. And so I wanted to just let everybody know kind of what has gone on with that. We reached out to the city of Fayetteville because that's in their planning area, and we asked for their input on it. They didn't want to give any input. They didn't have any problems. They didn't have any concerns. They didn't want to touch it. We checked the permits that were issued through the ADEQ and through the state, and that mine is well within its permitted area and is operating within those permits. There's a lot of questions concerning what might or might not have been said or agreements that may or may not have been reached. And I'm talking about handshake agreements between George Butler at the time and the rock quarry. Unfortunately, there's not any documentation on any agreements or parameters or anything. And so at this time, given that they are operating within their permits that they were issued, because this quarry predates our planning department, our planning code, because they're operating within that within those permits that they do have, that are the ADEQ permits up for renewal in May of next year, I believe. And since Fayetteville didn't have any issue or any problems to submit, and because we don't have any other documents that really nail down exactly what's going on, given that it's a mine, and with mines, as you know, they continue to expand. They are still within that original tract of property. They haven't expanded out of that. There were some questions about 2009 or 2006 when they went through, they tried to go through the process. That was on a completely different parcel of land. So the land where they are operating, where they've always been operating since prior to 2006, they're still there. And so at this time, they're operating within those parameters and those things. And so just wanted to update everybody that we have looked into that. We did seek input. We got none. And as long as they're operating within those original permits and those original parameters, then the county doesn't have any issue since it was grandfathered in.
Councilor, thank you. Councilor Justice Madison.
On Mr. Lester's first point about the Georgia Butler lawsuit, I just wanted to share with y'all, I think I meant to bring this up at a finance meeting, but given that I think some of us were concerned about what the county's financial obligations might be in that lawsuit, I actually reached out as in my capacity as chair of the finance committee and asked Mike Rainwater or Jason Owens to come and just report to the committee, and they declined. I wrote back and just said, can you answer some questions about the lawsuit? And I just want to make very clear, I'm not passing anything on the merits of the case. I just think the court deserves an update, and I think it puts y'all in a difficult position to give us an update because you're parties to the suit. So there's some awkwardness with the conflicts, and I was trying to sort of shortcut that. I received no response from the Rainwater firm at all in response to my email. Not even not answering your questions. I then forwarded that email on to Chris Valines at the Association of Counties to let him know that I was disappointed that the Rainwater firm was ignoring me, and I got no response from Mr. Valines. So I will just tell you that I'm not very happy with the Association of Counties or the Rainwater firm. I hope that they are giving you all better information than they gave me. I understand that communication from the Rainwater firm has been one of the problems with them representing us. We have no choice but to use them, and I found it incredibly frustrating that when a JP, who is an attorney that knows them sort of on multiple levels, asked questions that I was just sort of refused on all accounts. So I hope for the sake of the county that you all are getting better information, but I wanted you all to know that I was very disappointed in the lack of response that I received.
Justice Madison, thanks for that, and allow me and Councilor to visit back with them to see, one, I don't know the timing or any of that, and that's fine, but I think you're right, we do need to have some kind of feedback if you reached out. Justice Dennis, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Judge. The rock quarry is one of my, not one of mine, but it's one of the constituents call me more on the rock quarry than I get other calls, or almost. It's number 3. There's lots of different things that people call about, but that's right up there at the top. I know a family that just totally sold out and relocated because of the rock quarry. I thought I had been down at the planning office and seen where they were definitely out of their boundaries on their mining. Also, I thought that they'd gone deeper than they were supposed to go, and I also thought that they were getting into the water stream more than they were supposed to get into. So I accept what you say, but at the same time, I'd like to have you say, yes, we're sure that they're within their rights, because a lot of the people that live out there do not feel like they're doing the right thing.
We reached out to ADEQ, and they did confirm that they are operating within the parameters of their permit.
Okay, very good.
Which would include the waters and restrictions that they put on. Justice Balls.
Thank you, Judge. I also looked into it a little bit, and you were quoted on an article today, Mr. Lester, saying it's a gray area. So I'm confused on if we're sure about it or not. And I don't think putting the blame on the city of Fayetteville for not wanting to do anything is an excuse for us to say we can't do anything about it. Is there somebody else we could talk to within the state? I know their ADQ permit is up in, I think you said 2018. Is there anyone else that we could talk to about this? Because I'm kind of the opinion of Mr. Dennis. Some of the conversations I've had, they are out of what their permit is, and it seems like there's no definite answer either way. And I'm not saying it's your fault. I know that there's a lot of confusion going on with it, but I don't think there's a definite answer of if they are or not. And are we not wanting to push them on this because we're afraid of a lawsuit, or are we absolute certain that they are within their rights of whatever was agreed to previously? Thank you, Judge.
When you say not within their permit, what permit are you talking about? They don't have a county permit. There's no permit.
Are they within what the agreement was that they made with Mr. Butler, or?
It depends on which part of the agreement you want to take as being fact and which parts you want to take as not being fact. There were a lot of different agreements. There were a lot of different things said. That's the problem.
Gotcha.
The problem is when this issue came up and it could have been taken care of and we could have had clear-cut rules about what was going to happen with this permit, the person that was in the position to do that at the time, being paid by the county, did not do that. That has put us in a position where there is a lot of gray area.
Gotcha.
And so, in looking back, I would love to say, hey, we should have gone out, the county should have surveyed and said, this exactly right here, we're going to agree, we're all going to sign off. That never happened. That's where we are. And this idea of afraid of a lawsuit, I read that in the paper, or actually Scarlett questioned me on that, so I don't know where that's coming from. To be real honest with you, at some point, if it gets to the issue, a lawsuit will be needed so the court can say, yes, they can continue to do this, or no, Washington County has the right to stop you at this point. So that's where we are. That's the position of the county and the planning department right now.
Any other questions? Justice Ussery.
Thank you very much, Judge. I would assume, since their contract is up in May of next year, that we are going to put together something and make everybody sign off and get it done the way it should be done. I would assume we're taking steps that direction. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, the ADEQ permit is up, which we don't have anything to do with. This was a piece of property that was grandfathered in, and so there's a lot of the question becomes, if there's something in the county and we create a county policy or rule and something already exists in the county that is in violation of that, do we then say, oh, sorry, we've now created a rule, you need to shut down your operation and be done? Or do we say, hey, since you were already operating beforehand, you can continue to operate, but any new business or any new event that comes in, we are going to regulate under these parameters. And so then it becomes an issue of, well, how far do you at what point do you shut them down? And so as it stands now, you've got to look at where are they, what piece of land were they on at the time. I'm of the opinion that if you say they're grandfathered in for where they are. They can't go to a new piece of property. They can't move their operation somewhere and say, well, we're grandfathered in on this piece. No, it doesn't work that way. But they are grandfathered at their exact location. Yes, we will be trying to work with them on getting something when that ADEQ permit comes up. We will definitely try to work with them. If there is an agreement reached, we will have it in writing and we will have it signed off on by everybody, and it will be clear and concise on what they can do. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I think that's all we can ask for, but hopefully between ADEQ and some of the other things we can help mitigate this. Thank you.
Which is, again, I think, Justice Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like a little bit of a follow up on that. The people and constituents that I've talked to are grandfathered and grandmothered in from way back in the 1800s, and their homes are literally cracking. I worry about the pollution, the sound, the vibration of their houses. I mean, one says that his well went dry because of it. We're more familiar with fracking because of the oil industry But I think we're taking a blind look at this. I don't think we're looking at this the way that how it really affects our constituents. It's fine and dandy that they're grandfathered in, but I would think the citizens of Washington County are grandfathered in as well. And they're the ones being treaded on or tromped on. And, houses, when your house literally cracks because the foundation is shaking, because when they blast that hard and that often. If you don't live there, you don't experience it. You don't know what they're experiencing. But I've heard from them, and they're deeply concerned. And to tell you the truth, they think that we don't do anything for them and don't remember them. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
And thank you, Justice Dennis. And I think today's discussion with the mayors to talk about having them come and participate in those tech reviews. So when we have projects like that, especially in their planning district, they have a say in what goes on. So again, for us to go in and put parameters on a project that's coming up, and then 6 months later gets annexed in, and then now they have to redo all of if the mayors and their council were involved in the tech reviews earlier on in those processes, they can kind of help move that project in a direction that will be, and accessible, I guess is a word. So that direction today is going to be a good move going forward because of problems like this. Okay, that is it for the judge's report. All right, we're on the ordinances. First one up, I guess we have is Justice Pond.
Yes.
Oh, you got one question here. Go ahead. Justice Pond, are you about to read through your ordinance and have him read it?
He would read the title, and I'll have a little discussion on it.
Okay, and the one thing on the next three ordinances are all ratification of conditional use permits. I'll take the blame on myself. I didn't look over enough and realize that I needed to add an emergency clause in these. It's not necessary, but if we don't do these as an emergency, the people that have been granted approval on their project technically can't start their project until we go through the 3-month, 3-reading process. Typically, we will do emergency clauses so that it gives these people the ability to go ahead as soon as they walk out of here today. And so I would ask that when you're making your motions that you move to approve it with the addition of the emergency clause so that we can go ahead. And I'll correct the ordinances before they're published, just to let you know.
I would go so far as to say that the exclusion of emergency clause on these was a typo, because we always do these. We always do these as emergency clause.
Yeah, I think you still have to.
Okay, so do we want to read these? We want to suspend the rules and read each one of these 3 times.
Well, if you're moving to pass it as an emergency, it's not required to be read 3 times.
Okay. So how would we word how we just want to add emergency to these?
You're going to
suspend the rules and add emergency to the. Right.
Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I'm concerned that if it wasn't on the agenda that was published with an emergency clause, that it's really not appropriate to now make it an emergency.
The legal way to do it would just be to suspend the rules.
So it's on the agenda. There's a couple of things. The agenda is not required to be published in any form or fashion prior to the meeting. Technically, when we get here, we could give the public the agenda when they walk in. Because it's on here and the public knew it was on the agenda and we're making an amendment to it to include an emergency clause, we will give the public the time to come and speak in favor or against that. But that amendment can be made before the vote today and then added to the ordinance before the publication.
Okay, so even though the public was not aware that it would be voted on today and might not have attended as an emergency, we can still do that?
I believe you have a right to amend it to make it an emergency, just like you have a right to suspend the rules if you wanted to and read it 3 times.
Well, then it would still not go into effect immediately. An emergency clause would it not?
That's correct.
Yes.
So the only way to make this work for the applicants is to do an amendment with an emergency clause.
That's correct.
That's my opinion, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's what we need to do in order not to put these folks out that spend a lot of time and labor on their development. So how would we word that? Move to add emergency clause to the title?
I think that would work.
So
You'd have to
moved.
vote.
Well,
Yeah, read the title.
You have to take a vote. All in favor of adding the emergency clause?
So you made a motion, Justice
I'm
Pine?
making a motion to add emergency to the clause to the title. And
That has been seconded by Justice Patterson. All in favor?
request a roll call on that.
Okay. Justice Madison?
I think we need to amend it to add an emergency clause, not just emergency in the title.
Are you friendly amendment? You okay with that?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
All right. So
And then, can I
how
ask?
do you say?
I'm sorry. Can I ask,
read it.
what's the procedure for requesting a roll call? That seems
And
to be
that's what it's
happening
gonna
a
be,
lot, and
roll
I'm just,
call.
well, what? It takes up a lot of time. I think we need to decide what the procedure is for how we decide when to do a roll call, because that to me is not controversial. So, I just,
Ordinances to be roll call.
Let me say, for the sake of transparency, request a roll call.
Okay.
That takes a little more time.
That's correct.
well,
Okay.
So
But
you
I
heard
think-
Justice Madison's request?
I don't understand the procedure for requesting a roll call, and it doesn't have to be decided tonight. But I would ask Mr. Lester. I think we need guidance on that, because you've told us that for ordinances we need a roll call, but for virtually everything else we don't.
Ordinances and resolutions require a roll call vote
Okay.
because it
Okay.
requires that the secretary record the yeas and the nays.
Okay, got it.
On just typical motions, it can be typically those are done just by a voice vote. I think any member of the court has the ability to request either a show of hands or a roll call vote to do that. But you're not required to do so. You are required on ordinances and resolutions.
Okay, but it's the chair's prerogative, though, as to whether to do that. That's what I
That's
wanted
correct.
to make sure.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
Justice Pine, you heard Justice Madison's.
Yes, may I respond?
All right.
I don't think anyone should be discouraged from requesting a roll call for the sake of transparency. If anyone doesn't want to go down on the record, yes or no, on that roll call, because this goes on record, then they can simply abstain from the vote or say present. Thank you.
All right. So go ahead and state your
I
motion.
prefer to have these on record.
All right. So your motion again with the go ahead additional of the amendment
The amendment
Emergency clause.
to we'll reword it again.
I believe that the motion on the floor is a motion to amend ordinance item number 9 to include an emergency clause and thereby create an emergency for the passage. And that motion has been made and properly seconded by J.P. Patterson, and a request has been made by J.P. Pond that on the motion that that the chairman call the roll instead of just a voice vote on the motion.
Ms. Patty.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Felicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Now I'll read the ordinance. Item number 9, an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board and creating an emergency.
Yes, thank you. This is a simple lot split. It's in the Fayetteville growth area. It is serviced this parcel serviced by the city of Fayetteville. They had no comments or concerns. There was no comments received by the public. The staff recommended approval, and the planning board voted unanimously to approve this split. So I would move that we pass this ordinance.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. Where's this located at? And I guess I'll go ahead and say what my concern is. You're getting down to a half an acre for a septic
It's in the
system.
Fayetteville growth area, and it's going to be comparable to what's on the other side of the line inside the Fayetteville district. And that's one of the things we have to do is, if we're going to have a zoned county, is have developments on the county side likened to what's in the city of Fayetteville corporate limits. If you've got several questions about this, I'd ask Mr. Kimbrough to come forward and answer your questions.
Well, please do, because I think we're getting too small. Too small on the lot size. Unless it perks out very well. And my assumption is that you've looked at it a whole lot more than I have, so I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
The reason that there has to be a residential CUP on this is because it is under an acre. And we'll look at that again tonight on Frazier. So the reason we're going through this process is because it's not land use by right and because it is smaller than what we would normally say would be land use by right. So you have a point. If this were a subdivision, our smallest lot size that we would require would be 10,000 square feet. So it's not out of line to grant these smaller parcels when folks want to build in those areas, and it's not okay necessarily, but it is kind of in line with it being in Fayetteville's planning area because they're going to do all kinds of things with different size lots and so forth. It's juxtaposed in an area that's surrounded by the city limits and so forth, so it's not out of the pale for this to be a small lot and to be approved. It's not a bad thing. But to your point, I recognize what you're saying. You're concerned about really, really small lots. But this one, let me look. It's going to get it down to a half an acre, 0.49 and 0.46. So the lot, after it's taken care of, does take it from nearly an acre down to half an acre.
So you feel good about it?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? We'll move to public comment on this. Any public comments? Any public comments? All right. We're ready for roll call.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Rouse.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devon.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
All right. That's approved. Justice Devons, item 10.
Yes, this is an ordinance ratifying conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board for approval to allow a property line adjustment between two parcels that will result in one parcel being less than an acre. Also, unless anyone has any questions or concerns, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules and have it read by title only.
And adding.
And also, I'm sorry, I wrote that down. And to also include an emergency clause.
To amend it. There's a motion to amend to include emergency clause.
So there's been a motion by Justice Devons. Has been approved by Justice Bowman to add the emergency clause to that ordinance. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Now you can go ahead and ask for the reading.
Would Attorney Lester please read?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board and creating an emergency.
Questions? Any discussions? Any discussions?
This area is the Wheeler community area.
What community?
The Wheeler community over just off of just past Mount Comfort Road area. And Mr. Kimbrough is also here if you have any questions I did visit the property and in the surrounding area on Saturday. So
Just
I approve.
You had something? Okay.
Just one clarification. Since looks like 9, 10, and 11 all have the same title, do we need to specify the difference between those?
He's reading
that. Yes, in that I think when it's discussed where the project is, that's the difference. The titles on them are all the same for all of the conditional use permits. That's why there's a notation here of the different names, and why we give the JPs the opportunity to introduce and talk about what exactly this project is.
Any other discussions, questions? Justice Pine?
We need a motion to pass.
We're going to go to public comment first. If there's no other discussions here in the JPs. Public comments? Any public comments? All right.
I motion that we pass this ordinance.
It's been moved and properly second. Ms. Patty? On roll call.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
All right. And item 11, Justice Ussery.
Thank you very much. This is a cell tower, and there was in the eastern part of Springdale, I believe that there was one person that kind of said they weren't, they complained a little bit, but they've not come forward since then. And so I move that we make this an emergency clause and that we pass this.
It's been motion to move as an emergency clause. Motion to amend has been moved and properly seconded by Justice Devins. All in favor? Those opposed? Okay. Ayes have it, and we will go ahead and discussions, questions, JPs, discussions. Any questions?
I'll explain my no. Thank you, Judge. But I don't feel like this is a family that's trying to do something on their land. I think this is a corporation doing something, and I think we need to go through the 3 times. And so that was my reason for no. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Dennis. Any other discussion? Public comments? Anyone speak for or against? All right, Justice Pine. No further public comments. Go ahead, Justice Pine.
I might make the comment that these people have had to come before the Washington County Planning Board. A lot of I's dotted, T's crossed. Opportunity for people to come and speak out against this development at the Planning Board. That was not the case. The neighbors, people in that neighborhood, adjoining landowners, notified of the development. It might be that the infrastructure of the cell tower is needed. There might be possibly some people in that area that it's a dead area. They may not be able to reach out if they have some kind of accident, something like that. The emergency personnel might not be able to locate someone that has a wreck or something of that sort that don't know where they are. They have to have several cell towers to, and it takes some trigonometry to figure out where they are. With enough cell towers in use and located strategic places, all that sort of thing can happen a whole lot. We can almost have the amenities of the folks in town. It can be a safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Pine. Any other discussion? Receive a motion then, Justice Ussery?
Let's make a motion that we pass this as mentioned.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Ms. Petty, take the roll call.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman. Alicia Devons.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklet.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
All right. Item number 12, consent agenda discussion. Counselor?
Okay, so I was asked, I guess, by all of you about a consent agenda, consent calendar, as Robert's Rules calls it. And so in order to have that and to implement that, you would have to pass a rule, and there would have to be some ground rules about what can and cannot go on to a consent agenda. Typically on consent agendas, they are non-controversial items that don't require any kind of comment, don't require a vote, and sometimes even to get in, like a committee report wouldn't require a vote. Other things are possible non-controversial items like approval of minutes, that sort of thing. I know in looking at this and listening to some of seeing what's going on in the finance committees, the idea is possibly putting some maybe appropriation ordinances on the consent agenda. And I would caution you against doing that, because the ordinances, even though they're appropriation ordinances, they still have to be read. You still have to vote to suspend the rules and do just by title only, or they have to be read in their entirety. We have to, because they're required to have a roll call vote. I think theoretically you could lump all that together and just say everybody voted yes on them. They also each require the ability to have the public comment before the vote. I'm not going to sit here and say you can't do that. I would just say that little bit of caution, because there are certain things that have to happen that if they aren't followed properly could undo the whole thing. So I'm not trying to discourage the consent agenda by any means. I'm kind of neutral on it. Well, one thing to consider is with the consent agenda, some ground rules to consider. One, the committee, the chair would move, or the committee would vote to put something on send it to the consent agenda. The consent agenda would be prepared. It'll be listed, probably one of the first things on the agenda, because it would have to be done first. Any one member of the court could remove an item from the consent agenda and have it placed later in the agenda at the appropriate place for a full discussion. When we're talking about ordinances, then the other thing to consider there is, if we have an agenda and it's been voted on committee to go to a consent agenda, and someone that may otherwise want to speak on it, or something says, well, they're going to pass it anyways, I'm not going to show up, it gets pulled. It then gets put on the agenda as a normal item, like was brought up earlier. Does that person then, there's an argument about I should have known, I could have been there to talk about it, when technically you would have to have discussion anyway. So just want to caution those few things. But certainly if you're wanting to do this, we would need a motion. We'd need some rules about what you think should go on. And then if there's anything that you want to say absolutely cannot go on, probably now's the time to do that as well. Yes, ma'am.
Just a minute.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I think I just got confused by what response you gave me earlier about the emergency clause. You said our agendas aren't published, so there's not truly notice that it will be considered.
Unless someone was at a committee meeting where it was voted unanimously to go to the consent agenda.
I'm talking about the previous issue with the emergency clause. You
Right.
said I was concerned that there'd been lack of notice to the public that this was going to be done in one meeting tonight. And you said, well, they wouldn't have known that it was on the agenda anyway, because we don't publish our agendas.
We're not required to publish our agendas. We do publish them. We put them on the calendar. These ordinances were on the agenda, so they knew. So anybody that's had any issue with them knew that they were going to be discussed tonight. We didn't remove anything from the agenda or add anything. I'm not saying that that's a good argument that it got removed from a consent agenda to a regular item and I wasn't there, because, like I said, any ordinance, you're required to have that public comment anyways. So even if it's on a consent agenda, there will still have to be the opportunity to have the public speak in favor or against anything on the agenda.
I must not be being clear. My question is, why does that set of rules that you're talking about now, why did it not apply to the emergency clause? I don't have any problem with the emergency clause that we did.
Mm-hmm.
I just was concerned procedurally if we were doing it correctly because of notice, and that didn't concern you in the least. But in this case, when we're spending money, I see a conflict there.
Right. On a consent agenda, the idea is this is going to be put on, there will be no discussion, there's no controversy, it's all going to be voted in bonk all together. With the emergency clause, with any ordinance that comes before the court, you can amend that ordinance at this meeting. So if there is something that's incorrect or something that you want to change about an ordinance, you can vote to amend that ordinance. They were already on the agenda to be heard.
But with a consent agenda, anybody can pull it off.
That's
Just
correct.
Take it off.
That's correct. Anybody can pull any individual thing off the consent agenda. Like I said, I'm not speaking against it. I'm just saying there's caution on picking what you do want to put on there and what you don't. And I've thought about this a lot, and I have kind of gone back and forth on what would be best. I think you could do an appropriation ordinances on consent agendas because, one, if they're an appropriation ordinance, they're only going to be heard one time anyways. So there's no chance that it's going to be heard any additional times. Even though it's on the consent agenda, there will still be the opportunity to have public comment, so you're not denying anybody the right to have that public comment.
And it's been heard in committee.
And it's been heard in committee, and it's been passed, and it's on the consent agenda.
Okay. And there very well may be other types of ordinances that are not necessarily appropriation ordinances. Maybe one that's on its third reading, for instance.
That's correct.
We want to handle that way.
That's correct.
So,
or resolutions.
Well, resolutions often are meaningful personally to people who are here, and they would like to see their resolution voted on. So I would like to see us pursue this because we do end up having a lot of county officials elected and department heads sit through our meetings. And night times mean a lot to families sometimes. Mm-hmm. And they could be elsewhere after a long day's work here in the building. So would you get us some suggested rules to be ready to implement before our next meeting? Because it's my understanding from what you're saying, we have no consent agenda tonight.
That's correct.
And that was my understanding.
Right, because you'd have to vote to have a consent. You have to vote to implement the consent agenda.
And there had to be notice that there was such a thing. I mean, the agenda would have to say the following items are on the consent agenda.
That's correct.
And I think we should probably include the note that any member can ask for something to be removed, even though that's in Robert's rules.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Justice Madison, thank you. And I know you've been talking about this for a while. We visited a couple months ago, and so we'll go ahead and pursue that. Thank you, Counselor Justice Madison. Justice Ecke and Justice Harbison. Item 13.
Thank you, Judge. This is an ordinance amending the Section 32, which is the sick leave policy of the employee handbook. This does require 3 readings. I would like the first reading to be read in full, and then following that, we will have the second and third reading to suspend the rules and read by title only.
Okay. I'll read it. I'll read it in
first,
full.
and then we'll make the motion. But if you will, Mr. Lester.
Being enacted by the Quorum Court of the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled An Ordinance Amending Section 32C of the Employee Handbook. Whereas the Quorum Court has been reviewing the Washington County Employee Handbook, and whereas the Quorum Court has determined that Section 32C of the handbook is in need of amendment. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1, Washington County Employee Handbook, Section 32C is hereby amended as follows. An employee may use sick leave for personal illness, physical incapacity, or medical or dental appointment. Sick leave may also be used to care for or medical or dental appointments for a member of the immediate family, and we're adding or leave for another extended family member as approved by the elected official. And we'll be deleting the phrase which is defined in the FMLA as an employee's spouse, child, or parent. The term parent does not include a parent-in-law, nor does it include a son or daughter over the age of 18 unless incapable of self-care as defined by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under the American with Disabilities Act. Sick leave may be used in any instances where family and medical leave applies and for specified instances of work-related accidents or illnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. This is just to address the changing dynamics of family to include extended families like an aunt, great aunt, grandmother. And at this point, I'm going to defer to, if I may, judge to Justice Harbison, who is a co-sponsor, but it was her heart's passion to include extended family. Thank you.
Mrs. Harbison.
I think extended family should be included at the elected official's discretion. If there's a situation that arises where an employee needs to take care of a brother or a sister or an aunt or an uncle, that they would be aware of this and they could look at the situation and determine whether there was a need or not. This is not something automatic. It's just to give you another tool to help the Washington County employees if they so need to help an extended family member. And I think this is a good amendment to the policy. So I'm going to move that we pass 13.1.
Yeah. It's only first. Justice Madison, you had a comment? We're going to work through discussion. Justice Madison.
Had you already moved?
Yeah, so this is just on the first reading. And I would encourage the members to leave it on the first reading because I think it needs some refining. I wasn't on the committee, so I didn't offer my thoughts at the Personnel Committee. The idea right now behind the policy is that it's consistent with the FMLA, which if any of you have ever taken FMLA leave or dealt with the paperwork that HR has to deal with on the FMLA, it's a pain in the you-know-what. It's very challenging for HR to keep track of FMLA. Tracking this leave obligation to FMLA means that when you're tracking the FMLA, you're also tracking the sick leave. By creating this third category, we're creating a nightmare for Watson because now he's going to have to find out from each elected official who may have different rules. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a more generous leave policy. I think we should go to this overall PTO so that people can use it for vacation or sick or whatever they want, a personal day, and there shouldn't be these categories. But I'm concerned that you may have one office that decides, your great nephew qualifies and somebody else says, no, that doesn't. And then it's going to have to go, think about it, somebody in the road department is going to have to go get Judge Wood's permission because their, third cousin needs to, go to the dentist. I mean, it's just, it creates a lot of obligation for the elected official. So I think there ought to be rules that we set that we don't have it all come to the elected official. But I also think we need rules that make it easy for our HR folks to track this leave. And that the idea behind it now is that it's consistent with FMLA. I realize what J.P. Harbison's trying to do. I just think we've made it way more complicated than we need. And then in addition, we deleted the definition, but then left in the definition of parent. So the rest of it doesn't flow. It's also the Americans with Disabilities Act, so we've got a typo in our own handbook. The other thing that troubles me is the wording of the amendment. And this is just me being sort of a grammar person, but it says, the existing language of sick leave may also be used to care for or medical or dental appointments for a member of the immediate family. Okay, and then that would be defined. But the way it now reads is basically sick leave may be used to care for leave for other extended family member, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I think we've created language that's confusing, that's, if I were the employee, I wouldn't know what this meant. I think we've created a burden for HR. I think we've created a burden for all of our elected officials, especially those that oversee a large number of employees like the sheriff and the judge. And then we've created inconsistencies where somebody sticks to the FMLA and somebody else decides that your great nephew qualifies. So I think that we should leave this on first reading and perhaps consider tabling it until that we can all get together on moving to a PTO, a uniform PTO, so that anybody could take leave for whatever purpose they wanted. And Justice Harbison's goal would be accomplished without this additional burden on the elected officials, HR, and then this, what I think is now a very confusing paragraph, because the term parent is meaningless, but yet we define it. So I think that the best idea that came out of this discussion was the move to PTO, and that's what we ought to do. And this interim solution, I think, is not a good solution. So I'd urge the members to leave it on first reading until we can work through the PTO.
Thank you, Justice Madison. Justice Harbison.
I would like to reply to that because I think we're being nitpicky, like some attorneys are. I think everybody understands this. I don't. FMLA is a federal program. We live in Arkansas, and we need to extend and amend it in a way that we can use it. I don't think it makes a headache or anything else for HR or for Watson. It's straightforward that a person with the approval of the elected official can take care of a brother or sister. And what brought this up is that we had an employee take care of a brother that was in hospice for a week. And he had to come in and help his mother and his wife to take care of this employee. And when he went to take some vacation time, he found that the vacation time was deducted instead of sick leave. Now tell me what is wrong with a brother for a week taking care of his dying brother that he had taken care of for 3 months, but did not take 1 day off to do that. Now, your idea of this being a burden is not a burden. It gives the elected official to get a tool to take care of situations like this. Now, this is not trivial. It's a real situation. And if you don't, for a brother to take care of his dying brother for 3 months and then take a week off at the end because his mother and his wife were worn out and could not lift him and take care of the needs daily. Now, this is what brought this about, and I didn't really want to go into an individual situation. And these are the kinds of situations that we need to help our employees with. Now, I'm sorry if it doesn't fit a lawyer's description or the words are not what you think they need to be. I think it answers and gives the elected official the ability to help out in situations like this. And I'm talking about extreme situations. I am not talking about someone taking their aunt to the dentist. Those kinds of things are not what this is about. This is about extreme situations where someone helps out an extended family member. Thank you.
Justice Harbison, thank you. Justice Pine, and then Justice Sue Madison.
With much respect for J.P. Harbison and the efforts of J.P. Ecke. I would be interested in seeing, getting a picture of what I believe it was J.P. Maxwell suggested that we do. It'll take care of what you were trying to do, and I'm right behind you on your motive. But I believe what we've what J.P. Madison and J.P. Maxwell we're trying to get across to you might be simpler for everybody and have fewer chances for glitches and uh-ohs and that sort of thing. It'd be much easier for the employee to seek the leave they needed.
Thank you, Justice Pond. Justice Sue Madison, then Justice Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. And I very much appreciate J.P. Harbison's passion for this particular sad situation. But I'd like to ask our county attorney, the current policy says sick leave may be used to care for a member of the immediate family. Last time I checked, a brother was an immediate family member. Why in the world did we deny that? I mean, mother, father, sister, brother, child, that's immediate family.
Not according to FMLA, it's not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not real aware of it, or I don't have a lot of information on the situation on why something was denied in a department. So I'm
it
not.
Says it doesn't include a parent-in-law. It doesn't include a son or daughter of the age of 18. Doesn't say anything about not including a brother over the age of 18. I would have thought. Well, anyway, I would agree with J.P. Pond. Thank you.
Justice Maxwell, and then we'll go to J.P. Harbison.
Thank you, Judge. Just for everyone that wasn't here before, the other idea, the PTO idea, is really intended to alleviate the burden on the elected official and the employee, and to treat everyone fairly, and to save us from having to go through a process where we go through every little detail and even have elected officials who have different opinions, et cetera, where you have employees that maybe are being treated differently depending on who they report to and what the odd circumstance is. So the intended or the suggested idea was to solve this problem that we're dealing with tonight would be to allocate every day off that you have, whether it be sick, vacation, personal, whatever, and this is a growing trend, you would just allocate them all as paid time off. And an employee doesn't have to ask anybody if their circumstances meet. So you're really lowering the threshold for the employee where you're doing exactly what J.P. Harbison is intending to do, but making it much easier for the employee. They do not have to come and explain their situation. They don't have to ask for variance or whatever. They just take a paid day off. And then if you're the county official, you don't have to constantly be making a decision about, what degree of family or in-law or step or whatever. There's 100 different variations to family, and it puts every elected official or department head in a very difficult spot to have to make all of those decisions and then be consistent with all the other elected officials. So I think it's just an easy way to avoid all of that verbiage and discussion and redoing, and it gives complete freedom to the employee, and it takes some pressure off of the elected officials. So to me, simpler answers are better, and that's why I suggested it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Maxwell. Justice Harbison?
I agree with Justice Maxwell idea, but I see some problems like reducing the total amount of off time, vacation time, and sick leave, because we do this according to, whether they're full-time or part-time employees and that kind of thing. I basically support what you want to do, but I think there are more problems to that, and I think it will take a while, a year or more, for us to come up with something that will address the way you want to do the time off. That's the only problem I have. I do support what you do, your idea. Thank you.
Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. As the chairman of the Personnel Committee, that was the first recommendation that we were making, and out of respect to Justice Harbison, there was a motion passed to have this passed on to the full quorum court. But I wanted to let everybody know that Watson and I are working on that and working on the verbiage and how to put this together. I don't think it's going to take 1 year to do that because there are several templates out there that we can just glean from. But it's something that all counties are moving towards. I checked with Brandy McAllister with the Association of Counties, and that will be a burden release for a lot of public officials. Anyway, I hope we can just kind of end discussion and just move on because we are working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ecking. Justice Devin.
Just for the sake of speaking, there may be also some state family medical. There's not any? Okay. But in my understanding and prior working with different organizations, family medical leave only included the spouse, the wife, the son, or the daughter in the immediate family. And I thought that siblings and extended family members were not included. I could be wrong, but thank you. So I do support whatever the court's decision is, and I do suggest that if we want to wait, I agree with that too, but I like the PTO suggestion as well. And I do support Justice Harbison. Thank you.
Justice Harbison.
I'm going to make a motion that we withdraw 13.1. I'm going to make a motion that we withdraw 13.1 and work on the, I think that addresses the situation, but I just want something in place that can take care of extenuated circumstances. Thank you.
So it's been moved to strike or remove 13.1. It's been properly second. We can do a voice on that one. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right. Good discussion. Justice Keeglak? Okay. All right. Moving to item 14, Justice Madison on e-filing.
I might sound like a nitpicky lawyer on this one too. I'm sorry. This issue came up about the delay in the implementation of e-filing in Washington County when our circuit clerk was here asking for 2 additional staff people for next year to be able to handle the volume of filings in his office. And we also heard how the cost of overtime have been increased this year because of it. So this is the example I want to give you. Y'all also know that I'm a wordy lawyer, so when I write briefs, they're wordy too. So if I'm going to file a 25-page brief, which I'm known to do sometimes, I won't read it to you. The old-fashioned way was I would actually carry the document into the clerk's office. The clerk's office would stamp it, and they'd stick it in the paper file. And if the judge needed it or anybody else needed it, they would just come in and get the file and look at it. But so you imagine the work that was involved in the clerk's office was pretty minimal. So with this conversion that we've done halfway, what happens is I carry that same 25-page document to the clerk's office, and now they have to scan it in and upload it into the courts, the AOC, the Administrative Office of the Court System, code it properly to get it on the electronic docket. That right now is where they've got the huge backlog up there. The next transition that was supposed to happen for us next year was that I wouldn't go to the clerk's office anymore. I would upload the 25-page brief electronically to the system, and somebody in the clerk's office would just look at it, make sure I'd done it right, and it'd be good to go. So we were scheduled to go to that second conversion piece next year, and AOC has pushed us back. So what that's created, and we don't know when, and Mr. Sylvester doesn't have a new date for that. But I don't know if it's the AOC, legislative funding, or whatever it is, but this date being pushed back is costing the county. This is another one of those issues where the state is passing the buck to us, and it's costing us money. I want you to think about that Pulaski County got e-filing, what we don't have yet, in 2012. Benton County is completely rolled out as of last year. Faulkner County is gone. Craighead County is gone. If you look at all the sizable counties in the state, they're all done. Where's Washington County, the 3rd largest population? On the deferred list. So this resolution is what we discussed to basically express our dissatisfaction of where we're ranking in terms of priorities, to let the AOC know and to let legislators in Washington County know to speed it up because you're costing us money. The benefit to citizens, though, is documents are online, publicly available the day they're filed. And it's this system we've talked about is not perfect, but the access to information that it gives the public is really tremendous. And so I would ask Mr. Lester to read the resolution, which is 14.1 by title.
A resolution urging the Arkansas Administrative Office of the Courts to implement e-filing in Washington County without delay.
I would move to pass 14.1.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. There's any other discussion points at this point? Any questions? Justice Keeklag.
Thank you, Judge. And I agree with the author, and I appreciate that she drafted this resolution. I think that this is something that the Administrative Office of the Courts, thank you, the Administrative Office of the Courts ought to take immediate action on as efficiently as they can. Many residents have reached out to me in District 11 about this, and it's obviously a problem not only for those in the legal community, but residents in our county. So I agree and will support this resolution. Thank you, Judge, and thank you to the county attorney for drafting this and all resolutions and ordinances.
Any other discussions? Public comments? Any public comments? All right, Justice Madison, you want to go ahead and?
Roll call.
You already got approved.
Yeah, ready.
Ms. Patty.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklat.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
All right. Justice Madison. 15.
Yes. So the next series of items are from the Finance and Budget Committee. So 15.1, Mr. Lester, if you'd read the title, please.
An ordinance anticipating additional revenues of $450,224 in the DEM grant fund and appropriating the amount of $450,224 from the DEM grant fund to various Homeland Security budgets for 2017.
We're accepting grant revenue, so I'd move to pass 15.1.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussions? Any public comments? Ms. Patty.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklat.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
All right. Item 16, Justice Madison.
Yes, this is another item from Finance. It is just, I think this is just the cleanup, the quarterly cleanup. So I would move to pass 16.1. Oh, sorry. And Mr. Lester to read it.
An ordinance recognizing additional revenues of $21,342 and appropriating additional revenues of $85,467 in various funds and reducing $22,600 in various line items for 2017.
Now I'll move to pass.
Okay, it's
Second.
been moved. It's been properly second. Any discussions? Any questions? Public comments? Any public comments? Ms. Patty, roll call, please.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklat.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Very well. Justice Madison, item 18.
Yes, 17.1. We are
17.
yes transferring $800,000 for FEMA purposes for the road department. So I'd move to pass 17.1. Oh, and ask Mr. Lester to read it.
And I want to point out real quick on Article 3, It says the FEMA 2007 budget 3400-0517-3103. That was an error that was called, that Ms. Farber explained to me after y'all had already voted to move it on, and so I would ask that you amend that to, from that 0517 to 0203-3103 and pass with that amendment.
Yes, I would move to pass 17.1 with that correction of the Scribner's error.
Second.
An ordinance transferring $800,000 from the road fund to the FEMA fund and appropriating the amount of $800,000 from the FEMA fund to the FEMA 2017 budget for 2017.
All right, it's been moved and properly second with the amended change. Any discussions, questions? Public comments? Any public comments? Ms. Patty, roll call.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Rouse.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devons.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Okay, Justice Madison, now 18.
Mr. Lester, I'll start by asking you to read it so don't forget.
An ordinance reducing personal services line items in the animal shelter budget by $17,332 and appropriating the amount of $17,332 from the general fund to the animal shelter budget for 2017.
So this item is affecting the judge's office's outsourcing of the veterinarian position. So it's reducing the salary and moving it to other professional services to allow for the contract line item to be paid. And because it involves a personnel expense, it has to come through us. So I would move to pass 18.1.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion, questions? Discussions, questions. Public comments. Any public comments? Ms. Patty, roll call.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Rouse.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devons.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
And Justice Madison, item 19.
So this one did not come through finance budget, so I'm hopeful somebody knows a little bit more about it. But it's an emergency ordinance allowing us to continue doing business with someone that has a family member that works for the county.
Director,
I don't know how this came
Collector
to be.
Wood, you want to come in?
Mr. Gales, do you know, or does Ms. Wood know?
Yes, we can clarify this.
Collector
Okay,
Wood
yeah.
is coming.
Because
Wood will clarify it for you.
yeah, because so where there's a family relationship, we have to find that there's unusual circumstances justifying the doing business. But this sounds like an existing business relationship that needs to be renewed.
Well, an ordinance was never done when Mr. Ruff started it.
Oh.
And he started it back in 2003.
Oh.
And then she was hired in 2010.
Oh.
And so there was no ordinance ever done on this.
Can you tell us what Moonlight Enterprises or Industries does?
They do signs. They make signs, banners. And so for my signs and banners, I just had them replace a couple of them and then put my name on some and take Mr. Ruff's name off.
Okay. And so there was the relationship with Mr. Shipley's company existed before Miss Shipley worked for you, for the office?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Lester, can you read the title, please?
An emergency ordinance authorizing the county to continue to do business with Don Shipley, doing business as Moonlight Industries.
I would move to pass 19.1.
It's been moved and properly second. Thank you, Collector Wood. Any questions or discussion? Any questions, discussion, public comments? Any public comments? All right, Ms. Patty, roll call.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Rouse.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman. Alicia Devons.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Thank you, Justice Madison. Committee reports. Committee reports. You want to go around the horn, Justice Bowman?
Glad to. We didn't have any meeting for lack of agenda.
All right. Thank you, Justice Bowman. Justice Dennis? Same. No agenda. Thank you, Justice.
Information.
Sure.
Does the previous speaker think there'll be a November meeting?
Justice Bowman?
I couldn't hear the question.
Do you think there'll be a November meeting?
Actually, it was Dennis.
Oh,
Dennis,
okay.
will there be a November meeting?
Not unless something comes up. And so I don't have anything, and no one ever brings anything to me. So
Justice Keeklak going to work on that.
I think we can get rid of that committee. It doesn't exist.
Chairman of the Personnel Committee, Justice Ecke.
Yes, Judge. The Personnel Committee did meet, and we reviewed the grievance procedures and also the personal time off. Discussion was made, and also the JSET policies or not policies, but recommendations was tabled for next month, and they will be separated. And that's it.
Thank you, Justice Ecke. Finance and Budget.
The budget process is going along. We have one meeting next Tuesday at 5:30 where we will primarily look at the judges' budgets, but also the juvenile court increase, as well as the assessors, the prosecutor. I think that's the highlights. And that will conclude our discussion of individual budgets. And so put on your thinking caps, bring your big solutions, because we're going to be wrapping this baby up soon.
Thank you, Justice Madison. Justice Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. We did meet this month, covered kind of the basics, just the reporting, and I think the one other issue that we discussed was just the burden on the jail and the amount of prisoners that we have there and our capacity, and we also kind of discussed what each municipality pays for us taking care of their misdemeanors. And Major Cantrell got us the information to look over on what each city's contribution to our jail population typically is, and just had a discussion about if we should charge for booking for all cities and if we should charge by the day for detention, et cetera. So we're still in the discussion of that, but that was what we discussed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Justice Maxwell. Justice Ussery. Ordinances? We did not meet. Okay. All right, that's what we have for committee reports. 21, other business. Any other business? Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. Rather quickly, I want to say thank you to Director Charles Ward for taking care of being Johnny on the spot. There was a concern for Greasy Valley County Road, and I had Mr. Biswell comment that he wanted it to be looked at, and they went out there and looked at it, and we're going to follow up with Mr. Biswell, who's not in my district, but we do serve on the Extension Board. So I want to say thank you. Great job, Mr. Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I've closed down, apparently. I would like to make a motion that for our next regular quorum court meeting, we have included on the agenda a consent agenda with items that have been unanimously passed out of committee for that consent agenda, and that prior to that, Attorney Lester developed some rules for us to go by.
Second.
Any other business? Justice Speaker.
We do need a vote.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Seconded. All right. It's been moved and properly second to have consent agenda added to the agenda item for November with some rules going out from the Hart County Attorney's Office. All in favor? It's been moved and properly second. Oh, is there discussion on this? Okay, I'm sorry, Justice Keeklak.
I agree that the consent agenda will be a great tool for the quorum court. Residents in and outside of the district reached out to me And some of the residents expressed that they thought that the Quorum Court was moving too quickly on some resolutions and ordinances, and I explained that we only move things, or we try to commit to only move things to second and third reading when we think it's in the best interest of all the residents of the county, especially in the business of the county. And I pledged and explained that any resident that was interested in discussing an item off the consent agenda would be able to easily do that with their justice of the peace or another justice of the peace. So I agree with it and wanted to assure the residents that reached out to me that I support it because it will be a great tool for the county and us focusing on business that is important. Thank you.
It's been moved and properly second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we'll have that taken care of. Any other business? All right, one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and properly second. Meeting adjourned.